Mic check. 1, 2. Check, check. Testing. 1, 2. Are we live now? Okay. You're tuned to 76.5 on your YouTube dial. DF Retro FM. Digital Foundry welcomes everyone who's watching this video, and for those who've come for the first time, here's a breakdown of what's going on today. There are many types of racing games throughout history, but today we're looking at two: Ridge Racer 5 and Ridge Racer Type 4. These arcade-style racing games represent some of the finest driving in the industry, with a focus on style and skill. Over time, arcade racers have faded away, but the memory remains strong. So join me as we journey back once more to Ridge City. The city is yours. Welcome to the very first PlayStation 2 title to go gold, all the way back in the year 2000. This is Ridge Racer 5. It's a game that hails from Namco's era of greatness, a time when almost everything the Japanese publisher created was pure arcade-style gold. Ridge Racer 5 handles like a dream, the perfect balance of arcade-style drifting and realism. There's just enough weight to the cars that it feels satisfying to master without resorting to the automated drifting of Ridge Racers on PSP or Ridge Racer 6 on Xbox 360. It's even possible here to make use of the DualShock 2's pressure-sensitive buttons. It's a challenging game, one which requires players to have a solid grasp of the driving mechanics, but it rewards you greatly for mastery. But before we jump into the game's visuals, I feel I need to address one of its common complaints: the jaggies. It's true, early on, many PlayStation 2 titles made use of something called field rendering, a mode in which the console renders two alternating fields of scan lines which rapidly switch between odd and even lines. The idea is simple: you render the game at a lower internal resolution per frame, but by combining the two, you can give the impression of a higher resolution. In the case of Ridge Racer 5, there appears to be an issue with the way these fields are synchronized, resulting in combing artifacts that give the impression of serious aliasing. And it's something that could have been fixed. After all, Tekken Tag Tournament had launched in Japan just shortly after Ridge Racer 5 with the same issue, but by the time it was released in North America, Namco had modified the way it rendered out to the screen, resulting in a much cleaner, sharper game. Had the same adjustment been applied to Ridge Racer 5, perhaps things could have been very different. And this rendering method has a benefit: performance. Developers could opt to sacrifice image quality in favor of higher frame rates, which is exactly what Ridge Racer 5 is all about. Even in the face of aliasing and combing artifacts, Ridge Racer 5 is still a beautiful game with silky smooth performance, a polished presentation, and a whole host of then-new visual effects. It starts with this introductory sequence, which I feel was a landmark achievement for its day. This intro is entirely real-time at 60 frames per second, but plays out more like something you'd expect to find in a pre-rendered movie. Lots of instant camera cuts, high polygon models, and impressive text and background effects. Regardless of your feelings on Ai Fukami, who we see here, her character model is a significant jump forward for the time in terms of geometric complexity and animation quality. The only comparison point at the time would be games on the Dreamcast or the PC, where we had character models that same year looking more like this. The polish doesn't stop there. The menu system is equally impressive. Unlike many competing games, Ridge Racer 5 features one of the slickest, most refined menu systems of its day. Every single transition is well animated and beautifully designed, and each option has its own custom graphic design and animation to go along with it. Simply browsing through the game's menu system is a joy. The car selection screen is equally well done, as is the music selection, where you're given an interesting look at the upcoming track. The slickness of this entire presentation is something that cannot be understated. Even the loading screen is on point. It's short, lacking in tutorial text, and animates nicely. But then we get into the game itself and are presented with a world full of subdued hues and smart visual design. Ridge Racer 5 is perhaps the first game to feature a depth of field post-process effect visible during these introductory sequences, an effect also present in the PS2's own user interface. Taken as a whole, the game is well defined and detailed. Through numbers gleaned from emulation, we estimate that Ridge Racer 5 is pushing around 35,000 polygons per frame. At 60 frames per second then, we're looking at 2.1 million polygons per second. It is not a dramatic leap over the competition on Dreamcast, but this is the first PlayStation 2 game ever made, and these triangles are put to good use. Things like barriers are fully modeled here. While the cars themselves appear highly detailed with completely modeled wheels, as opposed to flat textures that we often saw in other games at the time. As you race, one of the first things that jumps out are the building reflections. These textures are used to simulate reflections of the environment in a way that helps define Ridge City as a proper city of glass. The cars also receive reflection maps, which cycle across the surface depending on the environment. A different texture is used outdoors versus while driving through a tunnel. The game also features a beautiful sun glare effect, another feature that was relatively new at the time. We had seen lens flares going back to the Nintendo 64 era, but a high color gradient is used to represent the glow of the low-hanging sun, and it was quite new. The quality of the game's color gradients cannot be understated here. Running in 24-bit color, things like the blue sky display startlingly clear colors without any dithering. All of these elements combine to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The art team has crafted something truly magnificent here with beautiful representation of different times of day, alongside a cohesive environment to race through. It's subtly beautiful rather than flashy. It's the kind of game that just feels good to play. Cruising through the streets of Ridge City at night as the music washes over you, it's a great feeling. And it's a feeling that any PlayStation fan would already be familiar with.
He's the one for me. There's no place I'd rather be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. To the finish line. Everywhere you look, he's right on time.
Welcome to Real Racing Roots 99. The most beautiful racing game on PlayStation. Ridge Racer Type 4. It's a game from a time when the PlayStation hardware itself was being outclassed handily by 3D accelerator cards on the PC. But strong art design and solid gameplay help push the game forward. It's all about the use of color and lighting. The PlayStation was limited in what it could achieve at the time, but Namco pushed through and delivered one of the best looking racing games on the platform. You can almost feel the heat waves from the tarmac surface as a blood orange sun sets on the raceway. The emerald green lights and black hues of a chilly evening then convey an atmosphere that was unheard of on the PlayStation. This is the look that defines Ridge Racer Type 4. The game also sidesteps PlayStation's own limitations, including affine texture mapping issues, with a healthy volume of triangles used to create the track's surface. Sure, we can still see warping, but it's minimized compared to many other games, and certainly the original Ridge Racer. The game is also known for its amazing soundtrack, with a selection of slick tracks backing each and every moment. It's still one of the best racing soundtracks ever created. Of course, we cannot forget to mention the unforgettable introduction movie, which I couldn't help but watch every time I started the game. At this point in the life of PlayStation, pre-rendered introductions were pedestrian, but there was something magical about that R4 intro that really left a mark. Back then, you could always count on Namco to produce amazing intros. There's also a matter of frame rate. R4 targets 30 frames per second, and unlike many other competing games at the time, like Gran Turismo, it actually hits that target 99% of the time. We see occasional little blips here and there, but this is a very steady game throughout. something rather common with Namco games from that era. R4 also includes a second disc, the bonus Turbo Mode disc. Pop this into your PlayStation, and you have the opportunity to play the original Ridge Racer at a full 60 frames per second. The original 30 frames per second game is still here, of course, but playing Ridge Racer at 60 FPS in a higher resolution mode is pretty incredible and shows just how much progress Namco had made on the console since its launch. It's a simplified game compared to R4, of course, but it's a great bonus feature nonetheless. And with that, we've come to the end of yet another episode. I hope you've enjoyed revisiting Ridge City with me, and maybe in the future we'll take a closer look at other games in the series. But if you enjoyed this video, as always, please do like and subscribe. And until next time, stay retro. Next time on DF Retro,